the ones that come to mind are the earlier years when things were pretty bright and shiny back then. And the first assignment that I can remember going off forest was going to Florida. And I just remember we got ordered, I believe we were on a fire that day, we got ordered up. And back in those days, they didn't have 2-to-1 rest cycle and all that stuff. So pretty much the end of the day came, we got ordered to go to Florida, and they gave us a couple hours to get our stuff together and head to the airport. And we got to the airport, and there was plenty of time to take a rest, but of course it was all so new and exciting to me. I wanted to be engaged the whole time. Even when we messed around at the airport, I think we went into Bakersfield, if I'm not mistaken. This was in 1989, so it's been a while. And I think we laid around for about 14 hours, 12 hours. But of course, I didn't go to sleep. It was just too much fun going on, too much excitement about what was coming. So anyway, we got on the plane, and we ended up in the Everglades in Florida. And of course, the first thing we did was we got there to the fire camp, which was just a Park Service grassy area to rest on. And it wasn't but a couple minutes we realized every little pool of water was filled with alligators. And of course, well, there was going to be no resting with those guys around, and they'd hand us out lunches, and eventually one of the guys threw a sandwich into the pool of alligators, and they all started fighting over it. And it was just a lot of fun going on, and new adventure. And I guess what I learned out of that is 54 hours later, when I finally did get a rest, I was pretty darn tired. I remember a helicopter flying in. We'd been out in the Everglades fighting fire all night, and it was a different type of fire too. I know when we headed out, it wasn't until 4:30 in the afternoon when apparently the RHs would come up and let the fire lay down a little bit, and that was the time when you could get out and take your flapper, which none of us knew what a flapper was, not even the superintendent, because the first thing he did when we got up to line up for in our tool order was we grabbed our chainsaws. We're all lined up, and I don't know if it was the IC or whoever was in charge of the fire, kind of came out laughing and said, "Oh, you boys, you're not going to get too far with that equipment." And we just looked at him like, "Yeah, whatever. We know how to use this stuff." And then eventually they convinced the old man, Ron Smith, that no, these are the tools that you're going to have to take out there. And they kind of gave us a rundown on how the fire line would go and how you would beat down the fire with a mud flap. So anyway, we went out and did a shift overnight, and there was one point I might backtrack on the 54 hours. I think we got about a 20-minute break where I actually laid down and fell asleep, and it was after we had been fighting fires for hours, and it was probably about sunup, because I know when we sat down and we had broken off in a short squad, and I was going with Ron Smith, the old man, and another a portion of the crew to go back about 2 miles behind us where we had a little flare up, and what we were doing is just on the fire line where the sawgrass was burning. I think that's what they called it. And we were beating it down, and if you weren't careful, if you didn't beat it down real well, and the embers didn't go out from the humidity, you could get a little flare up. Well, sure enough, that's what happened. We got one, but it was a couple miles out. We could see it out in the distance behind us, and so yeah, we trudged back, and we got about halfway there. The old man, everybody's ankles were hurting from walking on these clumps of stuff, and so he said, "Okay, sit down, take a break," and the sun was just starting to come up, and we sat down, and they had warned us about areas in the Everglades. Any pocket of water was going to be there's going to be an alligator in, or some kind of critter you didn't want to be around. And sure enough, we sat down for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and instantly dozed off. And then about 15, 20 minutes later, the old man said, "Okay, it's time to get up." And I looked over and there was a huge hole that we were sitting next to, and I got up and looked into it, and there was an alligator in there. The head was sticking out, and it must have been like that big. We figured it must have been like 12 or 15 feet long. It was a huge alligator. And of course we sat right next to it, took a little snooze, but we hoofed it out of there pretty quick. But that's one of the parts of the adventure that I really etched in my brain. And then that evening, we slept out on a platform, a lookout platform for the visitors. And all night long, we could hear the gators, and you'd look over the side, and they'd be right there at the wall. They had about a 3-foot wall between you and them. And we horsed around, told jokes all night. And that was my very first season as a Hotshot. That was my second season with the Forest Service. So that was some good adventure and there's a lot more to the story too. Guys going fishing, and it was just fun, all the different bugs. But anyway, that's one of the favorites from the old days. And